Okay, so it's just me streaming by myself now, and I feel rather left out because I see that you guys are having a good old chat there in the chat. So you're going to have to ask me some questions. This is, after all, an Ask Me Anything. I was talking about the different pronunciations of Fine Gael and Fine Gael and so on. I think it is a regional thing. So yeah, people do say Fine Gael, which is like, I don't know, it's a different way of pronouncing the Irish, I suppose, that people say in English. And then Fine Gael is some sort of Kerry variant, which I've picked up lately. Hi, we've got Franco from Los Angeles. That's awesome. Okay, so what other questions did we get? Apart from a lot of tech ones, Irish is spelled with the Roman alphabet. So why do so many letters combinations make such different sounds than they do in other languages that use it? From JMG. Okay, so my knowledge of that is that actually Irish used to have its very own alphabet, which was it was not too dissimilar from the Roman alphabet, but there was fewer letters. So it didn't have a K, for example, they would have a J. And lots of the sounds were formed with like having a little dot above the words. I'm not an expert in this, but essentially there was a series of reforms to make the Irish language, modernize it, I guess, and to bring it into the 21st century. That did away with the little dot above words, and what we have now is the H's instead, which is why you get D, H, B, H, and all variants thereof that sound all like a bit like a V. Okay, so Jared says, congratulations on the new job. Thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit about what Europe correspondent entails and how it's different from your previous work? Okay, so yeah, I don't know if you all know, but yeah, I've just started my new job like 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks now. And Europe correspondent for the Irish Times essentially means like you're covering the continent of Europe, particularly the institutions in Brussels, but not exclusively. So if there's an important election on in Spain or in the Netherlands or in Denmark or whatever, then you might be covering that. It's like the big story of the day across Europe. The Irish Times also has contributors, like regular contributors that they've had for years, and like in the main capitals, so like Berlin and Paris and London, and also a regular contributor in Spain and someone who does Eastern Europe. So they'll sometimes do coverage, but then I'm like the staff member who is kind of on call to do everything else, I guess. And it depends on the period in which you're doing it. So my predecessor was very, very much concerned with Brexit because it was like the Brexit heyday. Yeah, so he was like reporting on Brexit month in, month out. But obviously my entire experience of the job has just been coronavirus, because on the very first day that I started, that was like the overwhelming theme. It had just begun to become a very serious issue in Europe, and yeah, from day one it's just been COVID-19, which there's a weird actual coincidence about that. So this is actually not the first job I've started which has been totally overshadowed by a viral disease epidemic. So I actually began a job in, I think it was 2009 in France, and it was supposed to be my summer job, and I got a job teaching English in a summer school, which I was delighted about. And no sooner did I turned up for my first day of work, and the entire school had been shut down because of swine flu, and it was like one of the first incidences of swine flu in France. So this was one of these previous viruses that like caused a huge difficulty that came from Asia. And so I walked in, there was no one there. 80% or 90% of the kids had been pulled out of the school, and the paparazzi were at the gates. So I just walked in, and they were like, you know that we've been shut down because of swine flu. And I was like, I've no idea. It's my first day. Like, I'm just turning up. So we were each issued masks, and instead of having 25 children or kids to teach, I had 2. So it was just literally me and these 2 girls like sitting across from each other, all wearing masks. And to deal with the situation, what I did was, first of all, my teaching materials ran out immediately because they were all supposed to be group activities, which now couldn't occur. And so then we started instead playing, do you know that game Sticky Head? So it's like you get a piece of paper and you write a name on it, and you like stick it here on your head, like it might say Pamela Anderson or Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. And you're sitting kind of in a circle, and you get like 20 questions to ask and try and figure out who you are. We played that, except instead of having pieces of paper, we wrote it on the masks. So yeah, second time starting a job where a virus has come and sort of totally knocked it out. I didn't get I didn't get called back for a second day, by the way. The school was in too much turmoil, so that job went down the drain. Hopefully this one won't. So let's see. What Montisha, I think you say it, says, what does the greetings mean that you say to each other at the beginning of your episodes? And Tim, I see, has just written it out. So Tim says, Cain Queen a will to Naomi, which means, how are you, Naomi? And I say, Gohana war fad, Tim, which means very well indeed, Tim. So yeah, that's our little Irish that we use. And obviously we use slán, which you probably know at the end of episodes, which means bye. And today we can say Lá Féile Póric Chuna Dibh, which means Happy St. Patrick's Day to you, plural. And if you were saying it to one person, you'd say Lá Féile Póric Chuna Ditch, which is one. Jared says, as a former ASL teacher, I have such sympathy. I have to say, like, the kids were actually dead sound. So, like, it was a super weird situation for all of us. But they were aged about, I think they were maybe 12, 13, 2 girls. And, you know, like, people at that age are really fascinated in themselves and trying to figure themselves out. So what we ended up doing was, like figure out your personality quiz. Like, do you prefer X, Y, and Z? And what does this say about you? Which was, like, something that I got off the internet, something harmless. So we ended up doing that, and they were enthralled. Tim says, Naomi, I can call you on the phone if you want to put me on speaker. Yeah, if you want to call me on the phone, Tim, that's okay. I mean, guys, we're doing our best. I'm really sorry about this debacle. And yeah, then we can join in. We've had like such tech difficulties today, like I can't even tell you. We even had like earlier on, I was trying to call Tim just on WhatsApp and it wasn't working. I don't know if there's some sort of devil that's afflicting us. So Brian says, do you remember the language survey you posted on Oh, there's Tim. Can you see him?
Hello.
Tim, can you see the computer like sitting in front of you?
Yes, I can. I've missed a bit of the conversation because the YouTube feed is a little bit behind.
It's latent. Okay.
Yes. Can you hear me? Is that true, do you think?
I mean, I hope so. Yeah, I'll just hold you here beside me. So yeah, Brian was asking, do you remember the language survey that you posted on Twitter some time ago? It pretty accurately indicated one's geographic origins based on word usage. Yes. Okay.
Yes. That, I loved that because the stuff that, I mean, I've actually done a few of those before because I work in a languages department in a university, and you know, things like this, like regional dialects and like words that some regions use and other regions don't. That comes up all the time in this research of doctoral students and stuff. So they ask you to fill out surveys all the time. I'd seen that before, but I'd never seen anything as specific as this. And very few times in the past had I ever seen anyone really present me with words that I had really used and that I didn't think anyone else would really know. So I was so impressed with it anyway. And then to have the accuracy, I mean, that was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Tim, like, one thing that struck me was how, like, I was entirely East Coast and you were entirely West Coast, even though, like, I didn't actually realise that we were necessarily speaking different dialects of English. What's, like, a word that's super specific, that you find is super specific to your circle that you don't find other people understand?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot now. Now, listen,
I know one.
In Galway since I was... Oh, yeah, go on.
I think you say pairer. Right?
No.
You don't say pair. Topper is even more bizarre. What's topper? Who says topper? I knew it was something crazy.
It's not crazy at all. You're the crazy ones. It's the thing that you use to sharpen your pencil. Yeah. So it's the thing that you use to sharpen your pencil. Whereas we would have said to top your pencil. Even the verb is different, to top your pencil. So I remember once I walked into a shop in Dublin when I was at university, and I needed to buy a pencil sharpener, just to use the standard English term there. And I asked them for a topper, and just nobody in the shop understood what I meant. It was the strangest thing, because I was in Ireland, you know. It's
right.
Like, but yeah, it's amazing that like it hadn't travelled at all. Ireland is a small country. Like, how is it possible?
I swear to God, I'd never heard topper is still, like, if you even said it to me now, I don't think that I would understand it. Like topper is just
So
nothing.
you say pear, do you?
No, I don't say pear. I think pear is also often on. Also, what I say, pencil sharpener.
Oh, excuse me, Your Highness.
There's a lot of syllables there. It has to be said.
Yeah, it's very technical.
So Brian says that he did this survey, right, about about the dialect and the different words and uses of words. And he says, I'm at least 2 generations removed, but it showed my language origins from where my great-great-grandparents came from, Kerry. Isn't that amazing? I think that's fascinating.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing. And the same thing happened, I think, wasn't it with you, with both of us? Because my mother's from County Mayo and my father's from County Clare.
Yeah.
And it showed County Mayo, County Clare, and Galway. You know, so
crazy.
Like, obviously the words that I had grown up with them had survived in me. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. I'd love to know from Brian, like, what actually were the words that were the, like, telltale Kerry words. Was he going around saying fine Gael or what?
Yeah.
So, a watcher? Usually we say a listener, but I suppose in this case it's a watcher. A watcher called Cecily says,
yes.
I'd love to hear about your personal experiences with Irish language, and in the spirit of the day, love to hear any great Irish music recommendations, not necessarily trad, but whatever you love. Okay, experiences of the Irish language. Yeah, but this one is like almost the subject of an entire podcast. Our friends over at Mother Folklore. What's your experience of it, Tim?
Right. Well, yes, indeed. I suppose everyone has a strangely kind of personal experience with Irish.
Yeah.
I lived in a really strange place as concerns the Irish language. We moved just outside of Galway City when I was about 5 years old, and we moved to a town that is just inside the Gaeltacht in Galway. But it's just not really the Gaeltacht. Like people there don't really speak Irish necessarily. But officially it was, and that meant that we had to speak Irish actually to get grants and to get like community funding essentially, and like allowing us to build a house there and stuff. So there would actually be inspectors who would come to our house and like sit around the kitchen while we talked Irish to each other. That's another world, which is really weird. It's really strange.
They sat at the table while you spoke Irish with your parents to check?
Yeah, the idea was that they blended into the background and you carried on your day to make sure that you were speaking Irish in your house, and if you did, they would give you some kind of like community grant. And then
But Tim, did this only happen when the inspectors were there, or did you speak Irish at home ever again?
Well, you see, it was supposed to happen. I mean, it was supposed to happen all the time.
Yeah.
But the inspector thing was actually an incentive to do it. So that, you would have to kind of be practicing for this. And to be fair, we always got the grant. So obviously we were, up to date enough to do it. Anyway. So that was a really weird place to live. Anyway, because just 2 miles to the west, everyone spoke Irish fluently, and 2 miles to the east, really nobody really spoke Irish, except for school Irish. So we were somewhere in between, and the school was through Irish, and you would often speak Irish to people in the community every now and again. But my Irish, even though it was very good when I was a kid, was always second language Irish. It was never at a stage where I was speaking like a native speaker.
Yeah.
But I was speaking fluently. That said, so I spent 3 years of secondary school out in the Gaeltacht, but they treated my Irish. They treated me as if I wasn't really part of the club, I suppose, because I wasn't speaking Irish like they were, even though I was fluent. Yeah. And that weirdly kind of turned me off the language. I kind of felt a little bit like I don't want to be part of your club,
Yeah.
And I'm not going to put myself out to be part of the club where clearly I'm not welcome in the first place.
Right.
Which was, that's a very teenage response to that kind of thing. But it did have an effect, and I still kind of see that dynamic happening. I think a lot of people on Twitter will have seen it too, where Irish speakers correct other people's spelling, or they invent the actually statements, and it's very off-putting when you're speaking a foreign language or a second language, because you don't want to be undermined in the way that you express yourself. It's a pity. It's a bad reflex It's about a reflex in any language to be nitpicking people's words or grammar or anything. Anyway, after that, that's leaving that behind. I moved to the country when I was very young, and I used to speak it with my friends when I lived in London for a while, because it was a very handy kind of secret language.
Code.
But since then, I haven't spoken really since. And I'm in a weird position now where I understand it. Like if I turn on the news in Irish, I understand everything I hear, but it takes me a long time to put a sentence together, which is, it sounds weird, but actually the more bilingual people I know, the less weird it is. That seems to be a very common experience of people, where they actually grow up with one language as their first language, and they literally just forget it, like within 10 years if they move to another country. So that's what happens. That's how languages work, I suppose.
Also, like, you have like different vocabulary in different languages. Like, I know a lot of people who say they have one mother tongue, but then they did all their education through English, or education at least at university level through English. So they might be a profession, like a psychologist or something, and they might be from Spain, but it doesn't mean they can be a psychologist in Spanish, because they don't have the language to be a psychologist in Spanish. They just never have had it. Whereas they can only do that in English. So like, it's like it relates to certain parts of your life. And like, that's my experience anyway. And
you're a different person in different languages, aren't you? And like, it's funny how speaking Irish is in a way a little bit like speaking Hiberno English in a really intense way, because the grammatical and syntactical formations of the sentences are very similar to Hiberno English. Of course, Hiberno English is influenced by Irish. So you say things just, the only way to say something is like, is it the dinner I'll be having? But you're saying it in Irish, so it makes me feel just really Irish, because you're speaking Irish on the one hand, but you're also, if you were to translate it directly into English, you'd be speaking English in a really Irish way.
Yeah. It's a great hunger is on me or whatever.
All that stuff.
I have very early memories of like my dad teaching me an account in Irish. So I would have been a toddler or something then. So it's always been something quite important. But then, I just had a normal experience of learning it in school. I guess I've never been able to really learn languages very well in the classroom. Like I can manage in a few different languages now, but never worked for me for some reason in the classroom. But actually just being immersed in it and having to use it in a country, then it's fine. You can learn it. So of course, the first time I went to the Gaeltacht to do like Irish language summer school, then immediately I learned it, and it was no problem. It became my second spoken language. Then it didn't take very long. But yeah, the schooling doesn't work. And right now, like I will often put on Irish language radio just to kind of remind myself. And as soon as you hear the words, I feel like the structures in your brain reignite, reminding you where the Irish is. But yeah, I did find when I learned Italian, for example, all my Irish went away. I don't know where it went. I had to kind of regain it again afterwards. But now I don't know what it is. There's something like I'm kind of living around a lot of Dutch, and there's something about Dutch which is quite like, I don't know, it's more similar to Irish than a Romance language for some reason. And so sometimes it sort of triggers or provokes like Irish. And I just come up with gobbledygook sentences which are like half Irish words and half English words and like a French word, and it's a nightmare. I'm just totally confused. But anyway, yeah. So Simon says, totally agree on bilingual levels varying between skills. It's like listening or speaking to him, but it's nice to hear its other experiences too. Tisha asks, what do you think about apps like Duolingo to learn Irish? Are they good? Yeah, sure, whatever. I mean, it's going to be different for everybody. Whatever works for you. I know some people make great progress through Duolingo. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I'm all for it. I think it's not a complete tool. Yeah, I don't think you could. Well, maybe some people can, like you say, Naomi. Yeah. But from my experience, it feels like you need more structure and more classes, especially as concerns things like grammar.
Okay.
But for vocabulary, it is just excellent, and it's a really great complement just to do 10 minutes a day. Because, like I say this to my students actually all the time, that learning a language is like playing the piano, learning the piano. That, if you spend 3 hours on the piano every weekend, then you won't progress. But if you spend 5 minutes on the piano every day, then you will, because it's
That's
all about your
interesting.
memory and re-stimulating your memory again and again. So Duolingo is brilliant for that. And Cece has told us, Naomi, that her name is Cece,
Sorry.
by the way, so sorry about that.
And
I just want to answer her question there. She asked, was all your schooling in Irish? Yes, every day of my schooling from the age of 5 to the age of 18 was entirely 100% true Irish. So I know a lot of words for things like river bends and geographic terms.
You can't even say them in English. You can't even say what you know. You're like, I know those river bends, those things, those ones.
Those things. Meanders, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't really know the words for them in English, which is kind of annoying, and I've forgotten them in Irish, but whatever.
I've been around Tim and people who went to Tim's school, and it's really interesting to hear that sometimes when they add up stuff in their minds, they don't go, and 17 plus 23 is, they mutter it in Irish. So it's like, like in maths, they speak maths through Irish. I don't know if I don't think you do that, Tim, but some of your friends do. Yeah. It's like it sounds cool. It's like a druidic incantation, it sounds cool. Because it's like automatic,
You learn these things off by heart, so I suppose it just stayed in people's heads in Irish.
Yeah.
So, I still do it someday. The times tables, but I've forgotten the times tables in English too. But the few I remember are in Irish. Sé agus sé is a dóieg, shot agus shot is a carjeg. It makes a kind of song, the times tables. So I suppose,
Right. David Nama Kemono says, "What is this? What is going on here?" Which is a perfectly fair comment, I have to say. What's going on here?
Good question, David. Good question. It is clearly a woman in a Durnbill dress behind the backdrop of an Irish flag, holding up a phone with a stranger's face on it. Speaking to you, what did you think it was?
So, we're all going mad because we're in self-isolation, and we thought it might be might be a nice thing to gather with other people, going through the same experience, perhaps. So yeah, I rigged up my Irish flag here. It is, after all, St. Patrick's Day. I guess you know what? I just wanted to mark it somehow. I wanted today to be different and for us to do something St. Patrick's Day like. So that's what spurred this misadventure of the live stream and all of its technical troubles, which I apologize to all the watchers for. So Cece says, "Oh my God, Tim, I'm crying." Sorry. Crying in a good way, I hope.
With us.
Yeah, they are being so patient. They're so good. Oh my God.
And have used our sense of innovation, Naomi, to work around this in a kind of workable way.
Yeah.
Now, listen, hold on. We had another question that we never answered, and that's the trad music that we'd recommend for today.
Oh, the trad. Or Irish music in general.
Yes, Irish music in general, right.
There's a really good Spotify stream / playlist called A Breath of Fresh Air. I think it is. I can post it in the chat afterwards once I look it up and make sure it's the right one. And that is all of the current day music that's coming out of Ireland, selected by someone who's good at selecting music and who knows all about selecting music. So he puts it all together, or she, and it gets and you can just put it on and then you'll hear all this different stuff. Another cool thing in music that I like is This Ain't No Disco, which is a very cool sort of music show that's published actually online, and it's a mix of of hearing the songs, but also interviews with artists, and they're really, really excellent. I learned of Lisa Hannigan that way, who's a really amazing singer. Who else? So she's current. Lately, we've been doing a little bit of sort of reporting on more political rap, which is really interesting. There's, so obviously there's Kneecap. There's my setup is actually rather Kneecap, I must say. Or maybe I'm about to announce that the Crown forces have invaded some. Yeah, and I'm gonna make a threat. Anyway,
leave that there.
So casual, distant IRA joke there. But where I'm getting totally off track. Music. There's a crowd called the Mary Wallopers, which are kind of cool. I was trying to interview them the other day. I'm hoping to play some of their music. They're like folk, I guess. What else? What Irish music do you listen to, Tim?
Listen, I've got two like absolute favorites, and if you were to take my two top recommendations for St. Patrick's Day, they're oldies but goodies.
Yeah.
There's this movement which we will probably talk about in a future episode. There was this really interesting movement in the 60s and 70s and 80s of this kind of musical revival of trad. I think that's probably when people started saying trad, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And some of that music is just great because they were just trying to be really innovative with trad, and it was really like culturally hot moment because it was right in the middle of the Troubles, and Ireland was like riddled with emigration, and it was just one of those moments where kind of culture has a lot of avenues to work with. So my two big top artists from there is, number one is Sharon Shannon. Sharon Shannon is a traditional music player. She plays the fiddle and she also plays the music box and the accordion. Mm-hmm. And she's one of these really like gifted virtuosos in music, and she channels all of that like virtuoso talent into trad.
Yeah.
And she started playing trad music with like Jamaican influence, with like a lot of reggae influence, which it sounds a bit trite now, but in the 70s and 80s, like it was kind of punk, and it was a really nice effect that it had, and they worked really, really well together.
Yeah.
So if you want something really uplifting in this time of quarantine, I would go straight to Spotify, look up The Blackbird. That's the name of the track, The Blackbird by Sharon Shannon, and open the window and lean out the window and listen to that. And I promise you it will make you feel absolutely amazing. The second one I have to say is Christy Moore. Everything ever written or sung by Christy Moore is an absolutely beautiful songwriter. He's got an amazing voice, and that is just some of my favourite music that has ever come out of Ireland.
Awesome. I see my dad has joined the chat. Hi.
Hello.
Yeah. He says, wonderful presentation. You have to do a second episode where it is reversed, i.e. Naomi is on the phone and Tim is on the bigger screen. I have to say, if we do a repeat, we hopefully won't repeat the debacle of the technical difficulties that we had this time, and we'll be more polished.
It wasn't supposed to be like this, Niall.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Yeah. So Tim,
hold on.
Did we have any more? I wanted to ask. But what? Tell me before I rush on to something else.
Let me see. So Brian Sullivan says, my great-grandparents gave up speaking Irish. Ma came when she was 17. Never spoke a word of Irish to me. It makes me quite sad, actually.
That is sad.
That is sad, I suppose. And I suppose that's the story of so many immigrant families as well. And no more than a lot of immigrant families. There was this huge thing about Irish. People were ashamed of it. It's really hard to like grasp that now.
Yeah.
But like it was almost, maybe I suppose the best analogy today would be like showing up somewhere speaking a really like bumpkin dialect, like a real country, something that might like affect your job prospects, something that people would discriminate against. That's probably the best analogy today. Just the very fact speaking Irish was just seen as something inferior.
Backwards,
backward and provincial, and like educated people in Ireland were supposed to not speak Irish anymore, and like priests and everything in mass would encourage them to stop speaking Irish and to speak English, and like they had in a weird cultural context, they had their best interests at heart, because the priests were thinking with English they'll get a job, they'll be able to move on in life, and with Irish they'll be stuck in this village where they're going to be poor for the rest of their lives. So like this was very ingrained into older generations, so you can, I suppose, it's sad, but it was of its time, and that's what happened to lots of immigrant families, I suppose.
That's unfortunate. Interestingly, I found out that I had Gaelic speakers on both sides of my family, and some of them were Scots Gaelic speakers. Isn't that interesting? So I would have.
That is interesting.
Yeah, isn't that fantastic? So Montisha says, please put up the links to all of the artists and such that we were talking about. Okay, yes, we will do that. And by the way, if you don't know already, we do put up links on our website. There's like a page of our website which is called Learn More, and there's a bunch of links to stuff like recommendations, and and for like media and culture and that kind of thing, because we do get like a fair amount of questions for like of that kind. Given that it's St. Patrick's Day, Tim, can you tell us what was St. Patrick's Day like when you were growing up?
Oh, St. Patrick's Day. It's St. Patrick's Day in Ireland is actually kind of hit and miss because March weather in Ireland can be pretty awful.
Yeah.
It rains quite a lot, depending on where you are in the country, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so most of my youthful St. Patrick's Day were spent soaking wet, cold, and rather miserable, watching a parade go by and kind of wanting to go home. But no, I mean, I'm only joking, really. It was a great bit of fun.
Yeah.
And in Galway, anyway, Galway's only a small town, so almost all the kids would somehow be involved in the parade. It was, not unusual for almost everyone under the age of 10, let's say, to be involved in the parade.
Yeah.
And just go and march in your school uniform or something and play a tin whistle or dress up as St. Patrick with a snake or whatever they had planned for you. And it was a great bit of fun. It was, there was something else, actually, just before I move on, that I find really interesting is there was, back in the 80s, there was still a lingering kind of militaristic side to it. Something closer to maybe like Bastille Day in France, which is quite militaristic. Like, I remember my grandmother, she would always go to the garden and she would pick a big bunch of shamrock from the garden, and she'd find shamrock, and she wouldn't use clover. She'd actually go and find shamrock where she knew where to find it. And it's got these really long stems, and it's really quite lush. And she would pin that to her lapel in a very kind of militaristic fashion, almost like you would pin an Easter lily or a First World War poppy. That was the spirit that she was wearing it in.
The shamrock.
And that's kind of disappeared since. It's become much more of a fun thing. But definitely for her, this was clearly quite a serious day for the nation.
I have a question, actually, which is about, so like when I was growing up, you could, like, the idea is that you dress in the colours of the flag, right? So you can wear orange, white, green, all the colours acceptable. But then I was really surprised. I met an American one time on St. Patrick's Day who reprimanded me for wearing orange. And I was like, but that's one of our that's our colours. Apparently in America, it's like bad if you wear orange on St. Patrick's Day. You're only supposed to wear green, which I had no idea about.
Oh, that's a thing. I think that's like a tradition where if you don't wear green, you get to be pinched. People can pinch you.
That's not a thing, right? In Ireland, like, I never came across that.
Oh, no.
No.
Not in Ireland, no.
No.
And nor do people particularly wear green. I think maybe they have started in the last few years.
Is there a special punishment for people who wear Bavarian traditional dress and do anything else? Mockery, I think, is the appropriate response. Okay.
Yeah, random people tuning in on YouTube and asking, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah. We always had. So we lived in a smaller village when I was growing up, and we had that village St. Patrick's Day parade, and we were boat people because my parents are very into boats, and so we had dinghies. And it's actually quite hard to be the boat people in the St. Patrick's Day parade because you've actually got to pull the boat. You've got to pull it all the way down the main street. It's really heavy. And you put bunting all around and you pull the boat down the street. No, I'm only teasing. It was great fun. It's great to have a part in the parade, and we used to hand out leaflets about the boat sometimes and that kind of thing. It was nice to be in the parade, definitely. But yeah, boats are heavy, big wooden boats. Okay, so Cece is saying about the green thing. This is correct. I wear the whole darned flag because I'm that person, though. Good. Do people wear flag colours in Ireland? I mean, I think people wear green, white, and orange. I think that's fine.
It isn't so. It isn't so set in stone what you wear. Actually.
Yeah, actually, you don't have to. Right? You don't have to. That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's definitely a little bit like Halloween, I suppose. It's much more common now to wear green than it might have been before.
That's it. This happens with this thing. So the American take on it kind of gets projected back on Ireland, and because America's so culturally influential that we start to adopt those things, like with Halloween and that. Brian is full of good stories. Yeah. Brian says, when I was a kid, my Italian friend's mother wore an orange coat to Boston St. Patrick's Day parade and had to be protected by 4 police officers. She had no idea. That's shocking.
Oh my God! So maybe that is a political thing.
I think it's a political thing, Tim. Yeah, I think so.
Maybe it is. How interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an interesting one thing actually that you guys might remember from which episode was it? It was about the Glorious 12.
Oh yeah.
And we were speaking to an orangeman on the street who was wearing the orange sash, and he said to us that he celebrated St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
And I think this is I don't have total authority on this, but I feel like this is celebrated by both sides of the community in Northern Ireland. It's not that divisive of a day.
I mean, St. Patrick is the saint, I suppose, I think, of all of Ireland. And St. Patrick's cross is in the Union Jack, I think. So St. Patrick doesn't necessarily have to be renounced by people who come from a unionist background. So, yeah.
And he's buried in a Protestant church.
St. Patrick?
He is. Well,
where is
apparently.
he?
Is it Downpatrick? I always forget. Is it Downpatrick? I think it is. He's buried somewhere anyway in Northern Ireland, and it's obviously it wasn't always a Protestant church, but it is now, and it probably isn't St. Patrick either. I don't think, but there is a stone there that has traditionally been considered the burial site of St. Patrick.
But saints aren't that big, for Protestants, though, are they?
Well, it depends. It depends on the Protestant denomination.
Okay.
And yeah, I think even in some denominations that don't worship saints as supernatural beings, they can still kind of have a cultural fondness for them. That's not really affected.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, shall we thank everybody for joining the live stream? Did you have something you wanted to add, Tim?
Let me see. Hold on. There's one or two more comments here.
Oh, are there? Yeah.
Yes. Towing the boats, Naomi, behind the cars, says Niall, with small children in them, was dangerous. Well, Niall.
I think this is an explanation as well why we had to pull the boats ourselves. I think. Yes. Fine. Yes. Okay.
And J&G says that it was definitely political, wearing orange, or that how it was perceived.
It was perceived.
Anyway.
That's sad.
Yeah, what a pity. Wear what you like, guys.
Yeah, wear whatever
you
want.
like on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Right. Let me see. Do you have, I suppose, any other question? Oh, it is. Downpatrick Cathedral, says Martin Mendes Passarim.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much for Googling that for us.
Yeah.
We have our hands full, as you can see.
Yeah.
Hit us with another question, guys.
Yeah.
And
do keep them coming.
Yes. You might have seen something really lovely on social media, which is people in Ireland who are throwing self-isolation St. Patrick's Day parades.
Yeah.
And that is families who are stuck in their house. They just dress up the kids anyway, and they walk around the house, and they play their musical instruments, and they have this little St. Patrick's Day parade, which is really nice.
Yeah.
This is a big, day out that's been denied to everyone, so it's nice to kind of celebrate in some way.
Yeah.
And I saw another a video clip just a few moments before we went live of a street in Dublin, I think it was, where some guy came out with a guitar and it started singing the Beatles, and everyone
this was Hey Jude. That's so nice. Yeah.
That's it.
And it's so meaningful as well, because the words are take a sad song and make it better. And it was it's so lovely, to look at the cultural responses to this really weird, situation that we're in. I was writing about it in Italy, and I wrote a piece for it in the Irish Times all about, how we've all seen the little videos of people singing from balconies and that kind of thing. But it is actually much deeper than that. So the cultural flowering that's happened, where the whole culture and way of life of Italy is being reinterpreted as something that you can do for your living rooms, streaming or performing out the window. That's actually crucial to the maintenance of the incredible personal sacrifices that everybody's having to make for the common good. And that's why people are doing things like singing the old folk songs that everybody knows. And it's part of a sort of inspiring collectivity, a sense of solidarity and collective endeavor that's about winning consent for everybody doing this together and everybody respecting the restrictions on their lives for the greater good. So it's actually really important. And so I was inspired to start this and have to go. The Irish dance community is apparently doing virtual dance shows in our living rooms. Isn't that nice? That's great.
Well,
Yeah.
Naomi, now is your chance in your journal.
Oh my God, stop, Tim. I don't think my rig up would survive a touch of river dance. But I tell you what, if you like this live stream, if the watchers liked this live stream and would like to do it again, and will forgive us and give us another chance and give us a chance to get our act together, technologically speaking, we can definitely do it again, and maybe we can even introduce a bit of more complexity and a bit of performance and a guest or two even. So yeah, just give us our feedback. Thanks so much for your patience and for giving us a shot here, and we will wish you the best. We hope you're all taking care, and yeah, it's lovely to gather here for a little bit of community. No, now Tim, now look what you've done. There's demands for river dance.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, I mean, the people want what the people want. I don't know if did you ever do any Irish dancing?
Me? You know I did. I would, yeah, I did it for years in school, of course.
I didn't know you did.
You must have.
You did for what?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe you did tell me once.
Yeah.
We'll have to, I mean, we could, in the future, when our video's working better, there's that little step that you can teach everyone, the 1, 2, 3, angle 3.
I can teach it, okay.
You know that one?
I feel...
Could you maybe theoretically teach it?
Yeah. Yeah, theoretically, yes. Yeah, I know that Rabbi Sisi wants me to river dance, but I'm not going to do it because honestly, I just literally don't have the setup to. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. And yeah, let's all get together again. And stay safe.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for listening and watching in this case. Yeah.
And for bearing with us. This is me from the telephone.
Yeah. Bye. Slán, everybody.
Bye,
Ciao.
guys.
Bye.
Slán.
Bye.
Bye.